Today we have a PSA to give out because in about 3 days we're going to have our second part of Turbo Boost event to go live. So we are going to get the lift on the weekly cap of our crest acquisition, but also we are going to get our dinar vendor to come online. So our best in-slot purchase of our favorite trinkets, for example, will go live next reset. So in just a few days you will have the question to answer about which items should I buy, mostly which trinket, which best in slot trinket am I going to get for my character. Now there is a pretty lazy and extremely simple answer to this. We don't even need to have a video. You just go, for example, to Blood Mallet, you click on the spec you want, perhaps let's say one of the flavor of the month growing powerful specs. Maybe you care about Mythic Plus, right? About AoE damage, and this is what it tells you in terms of damage of trinkets, value of trinkets. Maybe you want to use something extra other than Blood Mallet. Maybe you want to use the Liquid Armory. Maybe you want to look after another growing niche underrated specs in Mythic Plus like Shaman. You want to look at the current build played in Mythic Plus as Stormbringer, and this is what they suggest picking for AoE value in Mythic Plus. So it would be a very simple video. Just go to one of these sites and check what is most powerful and most suggested. The reason we are having the video is because when you actually compare it with the reality of what these specs are playing, for example, in very high keys, in this case, when it comes to BM Hunter, the #1 build pretty much played consistently in Mythic Plus is Nether Prism and Ritual Forge. Classic Hunter using their 1 minute CD, Call of the Wild, and alternating 2 different 2-minute and whatever you wanted cooldown trinkets to line up with this one, unlike what is being suggested here in AoE damage. Same goes for Elemental, who is also being suggested by what the high level keys players are going for, being Antenna and Ritual Forge, rather than one of these trinkets being suggested by these sites. That's why we are going to have this video rather than simply checking these rankings of trinkets given by simulations. We're looking instead at the actual results clearing currently in game for all of these specs. Now, let's just say that there are about 3 winners across all of the specs in terms of most used trinkets as well as biggest best couples. You know, if this was one of these awards where we also have to select the best couple of the year, well, the individual award, the best actor of the year, would go to Antenna. The best actress to accompany the Antenna and also be in a head-to-head fight to win best couple of the year would be Arazi's Ritual Forge and the Unyielding Nether Prism to go alongside Antenna. It is one of the most common marriages, one of the most common couples for a long time in this game. The stat stick trinket next to the cooldown trinket that you pair together. For example, when it comes to the Antenna Unyielding Nether Prism combo, you have Frost DK, Unholy DK, Havoc Demon Hunter, BM Hunter, Marksmanship Hunter, Assassination Rogue, all preferring this combo as their best in slot set of trinkets in terms of most played right now. And this goes for both Mythic Plus and the Raid. When you switch it up and go for the other couple, so this time Antenna is still here, except now it's with Arazi's Ritual Forge rather than the Nether Prism, and you have Balanced Druid, Feral Druid, Devastation Evoker, you have Survival Hunter, you also have Windwalker Monk, Ret Paladin, Shadow Priest, Enhancement Shaman, Affliction Warlock, all going for this combo with a 2-minute unused trinket. Now, it is worth pointing out that this is also what suffers more in being replaced when it comes to Mythic Plus. So it is relevant, especially if nowadays you are more interested in Mythic Plus rather than the Raid. Now, some of these are going to be consistent and keep this couple for both Mythic Plus and the Raid. Others are going to be change it up around depending on whether or not you're playing in Mythic Plus or not. For example, Feral, instead of keeping the antenna in Mythic Plus, switches to double unused trinket. So both Ritual Forge and Nether Prism in Mythic Plus. You have Devastation that switches out the Ritual Forge 2-minute CD for a Lily 1.5 minute CD in Mythic Plus. You have BM, which also switches back to double unused trinket in Mythic Plus over the Nether Prism antenna in the raid. You have a handful of melee specs like Windwalker, Rep, even Arms that switch out their 2-minute CD Ritual Forge in favor of the improvised Seaphorium Pacemaker trinket when it comes to Mythic Plus. So while you do have some alternatives when it comes to Mythic Plus, by and large the most common combinations to look for in terms of best in slot trinkets are antenna paired with a 2-minute trinket of the Araz Ritual Forge or the do-it-yourself trinket of the Nether Prism. So obviously we're talking about the raid, the antenna is from Lumitar, the Ritual Forge is from Araz, and the Nether Prism is from Fractildus. Now, honestly, all three of these bosses are paggable. By now, you might have even seen groups going up to 5 out of 8 in terms of pags. As long as you make it past Araz, Fractildus is practically free. After this reset, you also have the even easier increase in item level to make it even easier to pag these bosses. So it is pretty simple. Now, there are the most common alternative if you still don't have access to any of these in the raid, in Mythic, or you simply refuse to step foot into Mythic raid right now, then the easiest replacement for antenna is Solia's Secret Technique. The easiest replacement for the Araz's Ritual Forge is the Signet of the Priory from Mythic Plus, and the easiest replacement for the Unyielding Nether Prism is the Lily of the Eternal Weave, outside of Strength specs, in which case Strength specs would be playing the replacement of the Cursed Stone Idol. Those are the scuffed do-it-yourself alternative replacement trinkets if you can't get the ones from the raid. So if you're not raiding, every time you hear antenna, pretty much compare it with Solia's. Every time you hear Araz's Ritual Forge, it's the Priory trinket, and every time we have the Nether Prism trinket, it's mostly gonna be replaced by Lily or by the Stone Idol. Now, outside of these two most common pairings in terms of trinket choices, we do have some alternatives. One of the alternatives worth mentioning is the set. Something that of course has been gaining more and more traction over time, because with more and more boss kills, more and more loot, more and more players have started to get the option to get their hands on the Shards of the Void set. So Diamantine Voidcore trinket coupled together with either the Spire, the Kris or the Blade weapon to make up the set. And the trinket in particular will be in high demand because other things like weapons have been more available for this set, of course, since you have multiples of them coming from multiple different bosses, even one of them much more easily from early bosses, because the Void Glass Spire, the staff, actually comes from Soulbinder, only the second boss of this raid, while the dagger and the sword are dropping from Nexus King and from Fractildus, so getting the weapon first is very easy right now, but then you would be missing the mythic trinket from Fractildus. So right now you do have multiple specs that have now gained the freedom of choice of being able to go for this set. So you have Arcane Mage at the moment playing Voidcore with antenna, as well as Fire Mage, as well as Frost Mage, or playing Voidcore. In the case of Fire and Frost, they are going for Parapodia over antenna, but the Voidcore stays. You also have Elemental Shaman playing with Voidcore and Ritual Forge. Voidcore is phased out in Mythic Plus in favor of the antenna. You also have Destro Warlock, talking about another very popular spec, at least in the raid in terms of value. He's also playing with Voidcore and antenna or Parapodia. And also worth pointing out, pretty much the majority of the healers. We haven't gone over yet about what the healer choice is for trinkets, but for the raid it's quite simple. You want to have the Voidcore as your trinket, and then you want to pair it together with a stat stick like Solia's, or antenna, or a non-used trinket. For Discipline Priest, you have the uniqueness of the Lily of the Eternal Weave, because it's a 90-second cooldown that perfectly lines up with your ramp, so they always go for that. Or the King's Command, what you have been seeing often in my clips in the raid, that annoying glow on the frames of players for you to click on, so you keep rolling the big intellect buff on yourself. Those are easily the 4 most used trinket across all healers when it comes to the raid. So if you do have access to the raid, if you have the weapon for the set and you can go for the Fractillus trinket, you pick that, because at this point it should be quite highly likely that as a healer you either have Antenna or Solia's trinket for yourself already. So going for the Shards of the Void set bonus is the best pick for your healer, and this is specifically for the raid. For Mythic Plus there is only one answer, and that is the Lumitar's trinket. The Living Silk is the #1 trinket you should go for if you are in Mythic Plus as a healer. You should have been using this at normal item level, at heroic item level, as well as tried your best to pug, at the very least, pug Lumitar, not just to actually hope to get the trinket for yourself, and then worst case scenario, you will be able to pick it up first thing this next reset from the vendor. The next trinket is irrelevant in Mythic Plus as a healer, it's just gonna be a generic stat stick as long as you have the Lumitar's Living Silk on use. The next one is the same. Antenna, Solia's, King Command as well. Even the Voidcore set is still fine as long as you pair one of these alongside the Lumitars when it comes to healers. Now going back, however, to DPS, we have skipped a few of the unique ones. We have already mentioned one of the unique picks of the double on use of Hunter, BM playing with Ritual Forge and Nether Prism in Mythic Plus, because it fits the cadence of the 1 minute cooldown of their CD, so they can pair them together with both of the trinkets. Same goes for Sub. Subtlety is also going for Unyielding, Nether Prism and Ritual Forge double on use trinket in all situations. Both the Raid and Mythic Plus is the most used combo for Sub. We have a few unique hipsters we haven't mentioned yet because they are going a different route. Outlaw is going for Antenna and Cosmic Hunt. Cosmic Hunt is not something you should worry about too much as a non-raiders, because it comes from the Soul Hunters, which is quite hard to be pugging right now. So if you don't have the option there, you can just leave this. We also have the complete hipster warrior picks. Arms still stays half and half because at least they still play with Antenna, but their other trinket of choice is the Arcanocore. You know, the good news is that you will be happy to learn of this, because the Arcanocore comes from Plexus Sentinel, first boss of the raid. So it's free. You can just pug it even right now, no problem, and get this trinket, either looting it because nobody else would actually want this trinket anyways, or from the vendor next reset. Fury is even more of a hipster. The picks of Fury are Forgotten Sky plus Arcanocore, literally the one unique combo out of all DPS specs or even tanks and healers. So they go top to bottom. They pick the Arcanocore from the first boss of the raid, and they pair this together with the Screams of a Forgotten Sky from the last boss of the raid, since this one comes from Dimensius. These are pretty much the only hipsters going against the grain when it comes to DPS. Outlaw, Arms and Fury, and the few double on use trinket users as we mentioned, like BM and Subrog, making use of both of them. All of the others though are either using Antenna with Nether Prism, Antenna with Ritual Forge, Voidcore with Antenna, Voidcore with Ritual Forge, with a couple of exceptions as we have seen of a few casters swapping out Antenna with Parapodia as an intellect trinket. Now there wasn't much to say about tanks because they were even more boring than what there was to say about healers when it comes to Mythic Plus and their Lumitar's trinket. For tanks, their version of the Lumitar trinket is the brand of Ceaseless Ire. It's stat stick plus the brand. So in this case it will be Antenna Plus brand is far and away the most used combo of trinkets when it comes to tanks. There are some niche hipster picks here and there, especially Prot Paladin, talking about the very meta tanks right now. For example, in Mythic Plus, some Paladins do also make use of the All Devouring Nucleus in a few of the Mythic Plus keys where they are more at risk of straight up dying. Now, the bad news in this case for the non-raiders is that let alone the Nucleus, which comes from Dimensius in Mythic, the brand, which is also the most powerful tank trinket in the game right now, comes from Soul Hunters. However, this is one of those powerful enough, just like the Lumitar's Living Silk. It's one of those powerful enough trinkets where you should still actually buy this in heroic version. If you think you have zero chance of getting to kill Soul Hunters in Mythic, this would still be good enough in heroic for tanks, just like the Lumitar's trinket would be enough at heroic level for healers. There is one scuffed alternative from Mythic Plus for this, which was the same best in slot trinket it used to be in seasons past, which is the Tome of Light's Devotion for tanks. This one is easier to get at max level because it comes from Mythic Plus. But it will still be the inferior version to the brand of Ceaseless Ire when it comes to tanking. These are all of the combination of trinkets for specs, tanks and healers, and as well as all of the DPS specs, with the exception of Aug. We have actually intentionally went past augmentation. We don't plan on mentioning them either. Besides them, this is what specs are currently running with in-game. As in their currently most picked choices in either the top results in the raid in Mythic or in the higher keys in Mythic Plus, rather than checking sims, checking sim results of best in slot trinkets. We instead looked at the in-game results of all of these specs and what they have been playing, hoping to shed some light on what you should go for on this weekly reset in terms of purchases for the first item, the first best in slot item you can pick from the vendor. Obviously, you can also use your brain. For example, if you already have the combo for your spec, like say Antenna and Nether Prism, there is going to be the option to buy, for example, the ring, the Mythic special ring from Dimensius, possibly the option of the Mythic special boots from Soul Hunters. You could also do the reverse. Maybe you already have the Voidcore set trinket, but you don't have the weapon. So you could be buying the weapon instead. So it's not it's not just about buying your best trinket. There are going to be a handful of other options in there, but by and large, this is what players will make it use for in a few days when the new reset comes live. So this is what specs are currently going for when it comes to their combos of best in slot trinkets. So with this on this Saturday, we can now take a break and go back to the rest of our weekend. We can now leave each other for today by starting the goodbyes, thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, yeah, okay, I will allow it this time being a bit of a longer video, having to go through all of these specs and their trinkets. It's fine.